Dude, I just went for a run. I'm so hot.
Yeah, that was really kind of dumb.
It was real dumb.
Really
It's like
dumb.
I have an ice pack and a fan on me right now.
Yeah, super dumb.
Like cannot cool off.
Yeah, no. I've done that into enough meetings to know not to do that.
I could never do that in a meeting. I would die.
Going into one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, Native Tongues, where we speak with writers and musicians about where they call home and how that place influenced their voice. I'm your host, Aaron Palmer, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Ken Hall. If you like what you're listening to, take a second to hit follow, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and check us out on Instagram at Native Tongues Pod for more fun content. This week on the pod, we've got a very funny and honest woman whose recent memoir, This Will Be Funny Later, details her troubled upbringing in a very humorous hindsight. She's the daughter of comedian Roseanne Barr, and after being raised in a rules-free, hippie household, she was thrust into an unwanted spotlight when her mom gained worldwide attention. She was then sent off to numerous facilities during her formative years, which only furthered her troubled youth. She is now a well-adjusted wife and mother of 5 kids, living in Colorado and enjoying life outside of the public eye. She was a delight to speak with, and very generous with her time. As you'll see, we cut about 10 minutes out of the intro after some false starts dealing with some audio issues and a number of screaming children. But this did not seem to stop the conversation, and we appreciated every minute of it. Let's welcome to the pod, Jenny Pentland. So you're not in Colorado right now?
No, I ended up being in Texas. I have all my family somehow managed to move to Texas. I don't know how it happened, but everybody, like almost everybody's here. So my oldest kid is here, and I came down to see him. And then my mom was here, and I ended up going to see her. And then I didn't realize she was performing, so I stayed an extra week to go watch her do stand up because I haven't seen her do that for so long.
That was nice of you.
Yeah, so I'm here with, how many kids do I have with me? 3, but one Alton goes to work, and so I rented an Airbnb, but I definitely brought the chaos with me. I didn't escape the chaos, so it's here in Texas.
Yes, you're on a trip. That's certainly not a vacation.
Yeah. What part of Texas?
We're in Austin right now.
Okay, that's what I would have guessed.
Yeah, Austin's like, because it's the comedy scene too. So
yeah.
My mom is somewhere between Austin and San Antonio. She lives there, but she comes here to do the work. And my oldest kid is doing open mics and doing stand up.
Oh, no way.
No kidding. How old is he now?
He's almost 24. He'll be 24 in a couple weeks.
Wow.
How's it going? How's the stand up thing working for him?
It's hard. I'm his mom, so it's hard for me to like, he sends me clips of him doing his act, and I'm like, he reminds me of Sam Kinison a little bit. And maybe so I'm just like, that was great. So I'm all that screaming. I really like the screaming. No, I mean, he's really good and he's really funny and he's totally natural and his delivery is great. And he reminds me a lot of my mom in the early. He's got a nice overlay of toxic masculinity on top of that.
Oh, nice. I was just about to say, is he like the next generation now, talking about his family growing up and like that thing, perpetuating that?
He might not be any of those clips yet, but I'm sure that it's coming at some point. Yeah. And then my next kid down is 19 and he's like, you know, he did stand up twice for like a school talent show, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but he killed it. And so I'm horrified to have like my 2 oldest kids both are doing stand up and open mics, and he was going to do some down here. And I'm like, maybe next time, because I think of my threshold.
Yeah.
Are they touring? Or is this like fresh?
Oh, it's fresh for them.
Yikes. So my wife, she watched me at like an open mic once, not for comedy. I can't do comedy. But just like play guitar.
Yeah.
And that like almost gave her a heart attack. She just like can't see people she likes putting themselves out there like that. It makes her so uncomfortable. So I get where you're coming from.
It is like the
It's
age.
kind of cool though that they both have that confidence to like say, yeah, I'm going to get up there and do that. I mean, there's a certain like, you know what I mean? A certain like fear factor that goes into that and being able like, nope, I'm just going to hop in and put myself out there.
Yeah, I am proud of them for that. The younger of the two is he hasn't gotten up in public yet, but he plays guitar, and he did do like a on stage performance with like his class, and I think that he kind of got the bug a little bit then, but he's the one he's kind of like a quiet stay at home, like he doesn't have the desire to be on stage, but he definitely sees the injustice in the world and feels like he needs to talk about it. So his is more like he's working on it. I got to get him up on stage, even though it's a large fear of mine. But I think
I was just about to ask that. Have you done, as part of like your book tour stuff, did you have to do some serious like, hey, come and talk to our group of people on this panel or something?
I think that I single-handedly created the COVID pandemic with my mind powers. So, because I was, second I finished it, I was like, "Now you have to do the press tour," and I'm like, yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And, but I had just had a baby, and I was like, yeah, but I can't leave my baby. And yeah, we'll get to that. But I can't really do anything. So I kept like putting it off. And then finally the week the book came out, they're like, you have to do something. And so I flew to LA, and I stayed in LA for like a week. And then I ended up never going back to Hawaii. So I was in Hawaii for like 12 years, and that's where I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And then I came to the mainland to do press, and I did like 2 podcasts over Zoom because nobody wanted real life stuff. I was like, and the second people started to come back out, the book had already been out for 3 months. And I was like, I didn't have to do any of it.
Oh, wow. The ideal way for you. Hey, before we keep going, I feel like every time I laugh, it's clipping. Do you have a pair of headphones?
Let's try this.
Yes.
Yeah.
My kid lost one of them, but apparently with just one. Let's see if
that was my I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old we're about to hop in a car ride for 6 hours to drive to North Carolina, and my daughter was like, hey, she's like, you should get this on audiobook and all that. And she's like, yeah, that's a great idea. She's like, but you need to get headphones. And I'm like, I thought he had headphones. And he's like, yeah, I lost them. I can't find them. I can't find them in the earbuds, even though they've been lost once and been like miraculously found again. And we're like, yes, now remember when you didn't have those, you need to cherish these, put them in a great spot. Like 2 weeks later. Because my daughter also has no time for listening to his audiobook playing in the car. She's like, no, it's not happening at all.
None of the kids do. I bought them all headphones, but they immediately, each one of them lost one headphone out of their pair. So
oh god,
I was like, can you stick 2 of them together and make them work together? But doesn't work.
Can they just put their heads together? Yeah. Kind of agree on.
Just lean in really hard.
That's a good idea. Is that better? Is that helping? Because I also have another.
I think it's actually way better. What do you think? Because
yeah, so far.
Okay, good. Perfect.
It's not cutting out at all.
Good. And then I messed this up like a true champ. And one thing you couldn't see that just happened was I knocked the case right into my coffee. So
wow. Oh no.
I'm still gonna drink the coffee.
I was gonna say, what's the ETA on the headphones? Like, how much longer do they have to live there?
They didn't have long. That was it.
Sorry, I feel like I'm getting the full experience right now after reading the book. Like you're just living up to all expectations that I had in the first few minutes.
I didn't exaggerate. If anything, I under exaggerated about 90% of it. I was supposed to write like I think 70,000 words was the commitment that I had, or like the basic memoir, and I wrote 140.
Yeah,
and I had to
oh wow,
I had to edit half of it out. So yeah, I did. I took a lot of the chaos out.
And I was gonna say, in that process, was that more, did you kind of go through and pare out throughout? Or were you like, well, I'll just sort of shorten some of the end stuff or the middle stuff or whatever,
I had to do both. I had to do both. I had to like go take out like a lot of the, I don't know. I sort of, as I was writing it, I realized I mostly wanted to tell the story about like the troubled teen industry and like those 5 years that I spent and various like placements and lockups and stuff, because even though, a lot of my story has to do with my mom and celebrity and fame and just growing up in a famous household and stuff, that was the part that I felt like they definitely went hand in hand, but that was the part that I really felt like people needed to know, or like, just mission wise, I felt like I had to help other people who had been through that kind of thing. So it kind of ended up being that I edited out anything that sort of didn't lend itself to that part of my story in any way, and took out all the stuff about ghosts and those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the book is paced pretty well because like it kind of goes obviously through the whole story. But you know, obviously there's a lot of explanation for how you got there, but I think you did a good job of like setting up that's really like what put you in the meat grinder. You know what I mean? It's like the foil to get you there. And then once you got into that, Jesus.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I mean, it's all kind of like, it was more the ideologies that I wanted to talk about, which is what I always find myself kind of like drawn to, is talking about, like, instead of blaming this person for, oh, they did this thing, it's like, what was the ideology at the time that created that environment where that is what people decided they were going to do to help their kids or whatever. And I think that I like to look at like those kind of things and the psychology behind everything. And it was cool to be able to look objectively at my life too. So
yeah, that's got to be tough. I thought it was well balanced. Like, you definitely had your points in there, but it kept the focus on you. That being said, I think the ending was a really good, you know, objective look back at all of this. Like, it kind of brought it together. And then you're right, the setup for falling into those things in a completely different era, you know, how celebrities were treated at that time, how kids were treated at that time, and like those facilities that took them in. Just hearing about it, like reading the blurb on the book, is shocking. But then when you get into it, it makes a lot of sense. And especially like if you're our age and you kind of remember a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a lot that resonated with me in there. Not the celebrity part.
Yeah.
You know, no one wanted anything to do with me.
Right.
But I was like a very defiant teen. And I feel like I still hold on to that quite a bit and have that kind of averse reaction to authority, you know, always trying to like stake my flag and call out the bullshit. I like the little mini chapter you did of the Joker versus the Jester.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the Jester was like perfect for me. It's like, oh yeah, that, and that. Like, I just feel like I'm always the one who like sees through all the bullshit and doesn't want to put up with it. And then when you describe Jokers, it's like, oh yeah, that's not where I thought it was going, but yeah, I could name 10 of them.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, like, especially comedy industry people and stuff like that too. Yeah, that was the part of the book that I actually liked the most, that I felt like I was writing to write instead of to tell a story. So that was my favorite part. So thank you.
Yeah.
Did you take notes? Because there's also the section where you talk about, I think it's 11 archetypes that come up of who's, you know, and how to deal with them. Were you actively thinking about that along the way, or is it something you looked back on and were able to sort of more process?
Yeah.
At what point did you start going, all right, yeah, this really is going to be something. I'm actually going to try to, you know, sort of keep track of all this shit?
The second I was born, I really feel like I was born and I was like, what is happening in this realm? This is very interesting. And I did start like kind of taking notes. And I think that like down the road, when things started to pick up and be crazy, it was more like I was taking notes in order to put off processing the things that I was going through in the moment. And I knew I was going to have to process them later at some point, which is where the title came from. This will be funny later. Anytime something crazy would happen, I'd be like, okay, what's kind of this funny spin on this so that I can see it? It was a way of kind of like forcing myself to see things objectively, so I wasn't like completely lost in the chaos and the emotional stuff going on in the moment. So it was like, I always have been kind of collecting these stories and sort of collecting the way that the way I was going to view them, like in this funny way. And I do that with everything. And it's like after writing the book and like kind of spiraling a little bit afterwards, that I realized like how much of a defense mechanism it was. And it's not so much that I'm funny as that I just am really good at the funny defense mechanism. And I think like that I've been doing that forever since I was little. And like, I remember one of my mom's first jokes in her stand-up act when I was little. She started doing stand-up when I was about, I think, 5 or 6. And she got famous when I was about 8 or 9. So she was doing stand-up in Denver, and like we went for a walk one day to go get something to eat, and we walked past a gas station, and it had like hot dogs in the window. It had a sign underneath the hot dogs that said something like "Come in, we're open," and then they had the sign next to it that said "Sorry, we're closed," that they forgot to take down or something. And I pointed at it and I said, more like "Sorry, we're open," like just that kind of like, we all did this quippy stuff when we were really, really young. That was like our family's language. And then my mom put that in her act and stuff. So
that's funny.
I mean, we all did that. And I always was like, spinning everything to make it funny in my head and see the ridiculousness of it and make life a little bit easier to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that also is kind of like indicative of a pretty grounded person, though, too, who can kind of see the humor in everything, even themselves. I just feel like I'm more comfortable around those types of people than ones who fall back on traditions and the way things should be and taking things so seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
Principles.
I feel that way too.
So was that like a natural transition? I mean, I guess most of us didn't grow up with like parents in comedy or funny parents,
Yeah.
Right.
So like when your mom went into comedy, was that weird for you? Or like, were you too young to even know the difference?
I think I was too young to know. I was just like, oh, my mom's working again, because she was a stay-at-home mom for so many years. But my grandpa, her dad, was like, he was one of those guys that would be like, hey, can you hold this for a second? And you put your hand out and he'd drop his wet dentures into your hand. And you were just like, oh my God, like just gross shit like that. Always something just, startling and shocking and not necessarily funny all the time. Like a lot of the times I did not find it funny. Like he did gross shit, but for other people it was funny. And he used to parade my mom out when she was like 3 in front of his friends and be like, kind of ask her to perform or have her doing our little funny shtick or whatever. So that's always been in our family like that. On my mom's side, and like there was some on my dad's side, they're all writers too. And so my mom and dad actually started doing stand-up at the same time. They went on a date and they went to an open mic and they saw the sign up and they're like, should we? And they both signed up and they went back the next week and both of them performed. And a lot of people don't know that my dad did stand-up until, I think I was probably like, they got divorced when I was about 13. We moved out to LA when I was like around 9. So they were both doing stand-up from like 9 to 13 during that time, while they were also writing, and they were both writing for the sitcom. And my dad had always written for my mom for her stand-up act and everything. So my dad's also a stand-up. And everybody else in the lineage is writers. Like wherever there's not comics, there's writers. And we actually were like, on my mom's side, our family they were killed in the Holocaust. And so we can't go back a certain amount to find any information about anybody. But we ended up through like 23andMe, found these cousins, and they knew the grandma of like, and we were able to get these stories back from like Lithuania, that my great grandma was like the town jester. She was known in that town as like the comedian and the funny one. And like, that's how everybody knew her. And it was cool to hear that story, because I'm like, oh, this is much more pervasive in our DNA than.
How about that?
It was crazy. It's like I knew, but.
I was just about to ask about your dad also, having both your parents. So I guess it was normalized a little more.
Yeah.
Was there one that you preferred, like one sense of humor or stand-up over the other?
Well, my mom's whole first beginning stand-up was about being a housewife.
Yeah.
And it was about being a mom. And so sometimes I would take the jokes personally because I was a kid and like, and I didn't get a lot of the jokes. I didn't get the jokes about uteruses being tracking devices. Like that's all stuff I got very, very well in my 20s when I started having kids. But I didn't get a lot of the jokes, and I didn't get to go see them perform because we weren't allowed in the club. So until my mom started doing stand-up in California at the Comedy Store on Sunset, and we were allowed in the green room, which was just one of those mistakes that would never be made now, but definitely was back in the 80s.
Well, you'd hope.
Talk about that for a second, because you guys were like urchins running around the
We were. Yeah. And nobody else had kids. So like almost every other comic that I had ever met was male. And, their wife and kids were at home, and they would make fun of them and be like, take my wife, please. And all those kind of jokes.
They're all hacky stuff.
Yeah, just hacky, like a lot of hacky stuff. Also a lot of funny stuff. I got to see like Richard Pryor and people who broke outside of that. But I didn't know what I was seeing either. I was just like, I get free soda. Like the kitchen staff would bring me anything to keep us quiet. So we just thought we got free food and soda, and we were hanging out up in the green room. But the green room at the Comedy Store had like a little window in it where you could look down on the stage. And we used to like watch my mom when I probably would have been like 9 or 10 then. And my sister is only 13 months older than me. And then my brother is 2 years younger than me. So like within 4 years, my mom had 3 kids. And so
Yeah.
we were feral, like they were hippies. My parents were
Right.
hippies. And then my dad had to get a job at the post office to support us. And we had no rules at home. We were the feral kids in the neighborhood. We were like always running around with no clothes on. I'm saying that now and realizing that the beginning of this interview was exactly like that with my kids.
So there's a comedy line that was passed through, and apparently a fashion line as well that comes through the genes.
There's definitely a fashion line. Actually, my mom has good fashion, but I didn't get that gene. I got my dad's. But yeah, so we got to watch and be involved, but I didn't realize what I was witnessing until, as an adult looking back at it and seeing what kind of, from the outside perspective, the kind of trajectory, I guess, that comedy's gone through because of the zeitgeist and the ways that the world is changing. Like, it used to be like wild. Like they used to say the worst shit when I was like 8.
Yeah.
And now it's like everybody's kind of holding back. But I think Austin, one thing I really like about Austin is that it's kind of a Wild West again with comedy here, which is cool. It's cool to see there be some kind of freedom to do those kind of things. Yeah.
And to put yourself out there, and just it's funny and not be so afraid, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a sense of like comedians when you were there of like the people that were losing their shit, like nervous or any of that kind of thing? Or, just at that level, like where you're watching an adult like melt a little bit.
Yeah. Like I remember Robin Williams, like he got up on stage one time, or I think I'm also really bad with recall. So people are like, what celebrities did you meet? And I'm like, I don't know. The only one I can remember is Carrie Fisher because she was so funny, but like everybody else, I like panic when I'm asked. But I do remember like, he was performing at the same club as my mom, and I was there and I saw him backstage and he was schwitz. He was covered in sweat. Like, I don't know if drugs were involved or what. I don't think they were. I just think it was like that neurotic energy. But yes, I was very much exposed to like that neurotic backstage energy. Wow. And then I would see them go out and be completely calm and totally self-possessed and like, hit every nail on the head and then come back in the back and be complete messes. And I was like, wow, that's... Yeah, in hindsight, that was a lot to witness even. So
yeah.
I'm sorry, did Carrie Fisher do comedy? Did she
it was just, she's the only celebrity I remember meeting. I'm trying to tame my hair.
Your hair is wonderful. It is no
Houston. Okay, because I keep seeing this little thing sticking up in the corner of the camera. Let me get it under control a bit. But yeah, Carrie, good job, Jenny. Great. Okay. It is what it is.
You're good.
I mean, going from Hawaii to Texas, it's got to be a little easier to tame, right?
No, it's 1,000 times worse, and I don't know why. And it's like every time I feel in my life like I've gotten a hair routine down, it's something changes, and then I just don't have. And I have one of my kids has like an afro, like curls like this, and it's wild. But he found a way to tame it, so I don't know. I use all his products, I just can't. I give up. I'm past that.
I just pull it out.
Yeah.
But neither Aaron nor I have that issue.
I'll send you my routine. It's pretty simple.
I've actually considered just going that route. I'm like, I'm past the prime. I'm past my prime. I don't need to. I've had kids, right? That's the only reason you need to look cute. You got to trick somebody into having kids.
Sure.
But when I met Carrie Fisher, I was really young and I I would say things to celebrities that I would cringe if anybody said now, but like she was over at our house hanging out with my mom. And I was like, oh my God, you were married to Paul Simon. He's my favorite. He's a genius. Like saying this to somebody who divorced him.
Right.
Like just really unaware. But I was like, oh, he's a genius. And she looked over at me and she goes, oh yeah. I just remember that. And I was like, uh-oh. And she goes, try being married to a genius. And I was like, okay, I got it. But that was all she said. But then I was like, she could have been really mean and she wasn't. She was straight to the point. And it's true. I would not want to be married to a genius. I would not want to do that.
Right. But you were also being honest and heartfelt and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was heartfelt. And I was a kid. Like she was nice about the fact that I was young. And I've met some cool people too. But yeah, the comics always had that sort of neurosis and self-hate. And, I did witness all of that, like sort of seeing that tortured artist thing. Because there was a lot of musicians too, and just artists in general, just being in LA, especially in the 80s. And people came from everywhere to do music and to act and to just be in the arts in some way or another. So
I really did watch that kind of tortured artist dynamic a lot. I saw it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Those industries aren't full of well-adjusted people, you know.
Yeah, and
You don't
can't be.
feel great about yourself and decide to pour all of your energy into standing up in front of people telling jokes.
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. Can you guys hear the kids in the background, or is that
Nope.
you can't hear it? Okay, good.
You're good.
Right. I will
But
text them and tell them to shut the fuck up.
I was going to say, if you need to send up a flare, though, don't, you know, if you need to take a minute, go
I
for
might
it.
have to elbow the wall, but
Go
no,
for
they're
it.
okay.
Yeah.
The sound is fine, though. If somebody comes through
Okay,
the wall,
good.
we'll let you know.
Okay, let me know if you can hear them, because they forget how they all have that voice too. Like everybody in our family has that performer voice where it's like the projection, and it's really loud in our house. It's really loud.
I worked with someone who called it her nursing home voice.
That's a perfect descriptor, actually.
Yeah, you could hear her like across the building at all times.
Yeah, I get that.
So, man, I want to jump all over the place. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many points in this that I found really interesting. One was the institutions you went to.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a sister that went not quite to the same degree, but she went to like some rehab facilities. And I remember her being just gone and bouncing around to different schools and kind of all over the place for quite a bit. I didn't fall into that, but, and I should have worn the shirt today. I went to Outward Bound when I was 18.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I did an 81-day course from Colorado to
Wow.
Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And yes, my friends found out about that,
Yes.
I don't know, fairly
Yes,
recently.
we did.
we do a Secret Santa every year. That's basically just how hard can we make other people in the room laugh, you know, with the joke
Love
stuff
it.
we're giving. And yeah, one of my friends got me a shirt that said Outward Bound graduate. You know.
So you did graduate, though.
Sort of.
Ish.
I want to hear that story.
I got a
Okay.
shirt covered in our friends' faces, like just a shirt.
Oh,
Just
that's
all it is
cute.
his face all over the place. Yeah, you would think so. You would think so until you saw him. Anyway,
Yeah. I've got a buddy who I compete with on a physical level at all times. And so I got him a tank top that says world's okayest muscles.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So the Outward Bound thing, like I totally get.
Yeah.
No one I know believes that I went willingly, but I swear to my best memory that I
Wasn't
did.
Outward Bound? You had to go. Was Outward Bound? You had to go willingly?
yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have like the ninjas that took me out in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I signed up and went.
That was the one that people wanted to go on, so they would like not try to murder each other or smash their own ankles with rocks.
Right.
I always thought after the ones I went on, I wish I would have gone on Outward Bound. I wish I would have wanted to go.
I was just
when
about to
I
say,
went.
do you think you would have ejected as soon as you got there, though? If you know, knowing what you know now.
Well, if I would have been forced to go and then after that and knew what it was, got to choose to go, then I would have been fine. But if I would have chosen to go and saw what I saw, then I would have left. I would have definitely left. Yeah. It was intense.
Mine was a last minute decision. Like I didn't get into college until the spring. So I had to find something to do for that semester. My parents showed me this pamphlet. They may have already signed me up. I don't know.
Yeah.
You were already signed up. Like, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah. But it was that same feeling. I remember going there, you know, getting dropped off in like the middle of nowhere on a mountain in Colorado and looking around and thinking, oh shit, I'm stuck here.
And that was in summer.
That was that was September 11th.
Okay.
2001.
So you
I
went through
remember
the snow.
No, I didn't go
No,
through the
okay.
snow. We started in Grand Junction.
Mhm.
So it was pretty dry, you know, it was nice. But I remember getting picked up that morning on the bus from the hotel and someone saying, hey, there's something happening on the news. And then when they dropped us off of the mountains, they were like, hey, this big thing just happened.
Shit.
You can hear more about it in 3 months.
Oh my God. I didn't even know
Wow.
that
Oh my
happened
God.
that way.
You didn't get any more information on it while you were out there?
Not really.
Wow.
I mean, like just tidbits here and there, but not nearly to the extent that like everyone else did.
What was that like to like come out into the world again after that?
Oh my God. It was bizarre. Like I had no idea that this was shutting the world down and that this had been on the news, like on every TV station.
Yeah, it was all
nonstop.
consuming. That would be like going on an adventure during the pandemic and then coming out, and it would be
Right.
extremely shocking. Yeah, I can't imagine.
Well, you flew out there, right? Because we're in Baltimore, so you
Okay.
flew out there
The evening of September 10th.
September 10th. And then when you're
on an
flying,
airplane, how nice.
and then when you're flying
Yeah,
back,
right.
it's like, oh, this is different. So this
Oh,
feels a little
yeah.
different at the airport. That's
God,
crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Crazy. And you were out there
Yeah.
3 months. I mean, that's a big chunk of time because I think the longest I was out, I can't remember how long I was on the second one because they just kept extending based on my behavior, extending and extending and extending until I realized that that's what was happening. But
Right.
the first one was like 52 days. And it's like, that's long enough for you to forget who you were before, what the world was like, and have like your proverbial eyes adjust to the darkness and it's crazy.
Right.
It's a crazy
I
experience.
mean, that's a lifetime when you're young.
Yeah. 3 months is insane.
Yeah. So I made it through maybe 2 months, 2.5 months. I don't know. Somewhere toward the end, I got kicked off for smoking pot.
That's a good reason. How they think people are
Yes.
going to go on Outward Bound and not smoke pot in Colorado and New Mexico? That's ridiculous.
Right?
It's
I admitted to it too. And me and a group of people got kicked off, and then we were all like, well, we're not going home. So we're just going to,
Go smoke pot.
stay in Bisbee, Arizona and hitchhike around. And
Did you go to Bisbee?
yeah, I was stuck. That's where they left me. I was stuck there.
Were they
Was
like-
Bisbee then like an artist community already?
Not like a fun artist community.
Yeah. Like a
But-
meth, like the meth kind.
Yeah. But there was definitely some
Methy
people who were
artist
just like,
community.
you're looking for a place to stay? Yeah, hop in our truck. You can stay at our house.
I mean,
And
that's
18,
nice.
you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. There's probably no issues here.
it was a different time.
Yeah. It was a different
Yes.
time. Bisbee is still kind of weird. Like, I mean, I haven't been there yet, but I have a lot of friends there. And
So you did the insane, drop you in the middle of the desert, and now you had to basically work for your food and
Yeah.
all that.
Yep.
In retrospect, what do you think was the hardest part of that? Like for you, was it the FU to the people, like the mental part of it, or was it just getting over? When you talk in the
Well, especially
book,
when you're like yanked from your life
Yeah.
and you don't
Yeah.
want to be there.
yeah.
And you still think there's a route back.
I did. I still thought, I just got to say the right thing to the right person, and this is all over. Yeah, it kind of was like, it was a totally separate experience though, because the first one I went to, like, they didn't have such a Native American spin on it. They had like a pioneer spin on it. So you went out there in the first 3 days.
did you themes? I didn't know.
They had themes and they switched themes like every kind of 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks was called, I wrote it in the book because I think I forgot already what it was called, but it was primitive. It was called.
Yeah. There you go.
So they gave you, for 3 days, you got nothing. You got one banana and some water. And then
Mhm.
after the 3 days, they gave you a knife, which seems like not the next step in the things to do, but you got this big
Yeah.
fixed blade knife because that's what we use for everything, to make fires and everything. And they gave us a can of
But they
peaches.
took your shoes.
They took our shoes at night, and then we got them back during the
Oh.
day. The second one I was on, though, they took my shoes because I was being, I was having trouble with authority on that one, and so they put me on a solo. You know what? Too, it was like one of the counselors like just attacked this like 13-year-old girl and pinned her down and was like screaming at her and acting as if she was like totally out of control because there was no regulation.
Mm.
And I was like,
Right.
he's out of line. So I said something. I'm like, that was totally unnecessary and out of line. And so I got put on solo. They called it for 3 days, where they stuck me in the woods in like these brambles. And they gave me a sleeping pad and my sleeping bag. And then you had this poncho that you would tie the hood up at night and tie it to a tree and tie out the four corners. And then during the day, you would wear it as like rain gear. So they gave me that. And I was like, I had to pee. I got up to pee. They took my shoes and I'm stepping on all these brambles. And I'm like, I'm not going to pee like right next to my bed because that's how animals come get you and murder you in the night.
Good to know.
So yeah,
Is when you cut the
just in
foam
case.
shoes.
Yeah, that's when I cut.
Right.
So I used the sleeping pad and I made myself shoes, and they were like, they were elaborate. It was like 2 layers of foam, and they worked really well. And they were kind of like Jesus shoes. Like I
Yeah.
cut some of the parachute cord off of the tie outs that I had, and I was all proud of myself. And I mean, I did that to go pee. So like I had to pee the whole time I was making them. And then I got up and I went off and I went pee, and they came like right at that exact time, came and saw me make it, that I had like these shoes on, and they were like, you're trying to run away. And so they took the shoes, and I got in more trouble. My time out there was extended.
That is ridiculous that, you would hope that level of, resourcefulness might be slightly encouraged.
I deserved a patent, if not a pat on the back. I should have had a patent. They were amazing.
I was thinking that throughout most of the book is that, again, because, we're looking at a time when people weren't educated and didn't have degrees in this and a lot of experience. They were just jobs. It seems like people had, where they were enforcers.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because like through so much of this, it just seems like you needed some positive reinforcement.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, they were making a lot of money off me. And I think once that I realized that,
yeah,
because the first hospital I was in, it was like the longest any other kid was in there was 6 weeks. And he tried to kill his parents, like literally. And the gun jammed. It's not like he had a change of heart. The gun jammed. So he was the other person in there the same length of time as me. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what do I have to do to get out of here? Like after a while. And it was 11 months. I was in that first place, 6 months. They moved me downstairs for 5 months. And there was a counselor there. One of the counselors that wasn't a licensed anything. He was just a recovering drug addict that volunteered to help other recovering drug addicts. And most of the people in there were.
Right.
He was great. Actually, those people were people who saved my life more often than not. Like they weren't healed people. They were like still living that same, like when I went to the boarding school later, I'll talk about that in a second. But this guy, Ed, he looked like a comic, and he wore a black leather jacket, and he had all these wrinkles in his face, and he was just kind of rough, and he had that sort of rough 80s uncle thing going. And he gave me a cigarette one time. Something had happened, and I went out. We were allowed to smoke. Like that was great.
How old were you there?
That's crazy too.
13. Like if your parents signed the consent waiver, you could smoke when you were 13. And even if they didn't, like who's going to catch you? Your friends are all smoking. So if you smell like smoke, oh, my friend was smoking. So we would sneak cigarettes all the time anyway. And I actually, at that point, I was like 14, and I went up to him and I was like, can you like just tell me what I have to do? Like, tell me what I have to do. Tell me what I have to say. Or just explain to me why I'm in here. Oh, I remember what happened is I tried to break into, they had to keep my chart, which was this thick. Everybody else's was this. They had to keep it in a back room locked away because the staff members kept trying to sell it to the Inquirer. Or sell like pieces of it or read it.
Oh my
And so it had to be in its own room. And one time I was like, how come I'm still in here? I need to get out. I want to see what they're saying about me, because I wasn't even allowed to look at it. And here they were every day writing little notes in there. And I'm like, I'm going to get my fucking hands on that and find out what it is. And I'm going to figure out how to get out of here. So I tried to break into the room. I got busted. I am not slick in any way. And that's why I was in trouble. So I was outside talking to Ed anyway. And I had just gotten to this like peak level of like disdain and not knowing why I was there, and just being really sort of like frustrated and mad at the whole experience. And then I asked him like what I needed to do. And he's like, it was like a movie, because he like took a drag off a cigarette and he like blew it out. And then he was like, you have motion picture health and welfare insurance. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like waiting for him to say something. And he's like, you're worth $1 million a year. Your mental health insurance policy is worth $1 million a year. You're not going anywhere. And I was like,
oh my God,
what? Like, no. And then, that meme with the lady looking off with all the math numbers. Like I was trying to like figure out what that meant in my 14-year-old brain. And it clicked enough so that I was like, what the fuck? Oh my God. I started to count down till I was 18, because I knew there was just no way I was going to age out of the system.
It's like a legalized ransom.
Yeah.
Almost,
I mean, it's predatory. Yeah. It's like the same thing that happens now with, and why people talk about prison reform is it should not be an industry. And it is. And it was an industry. It was the troubled teen industry. And I mean, that name is new. Nobody knew what to call it then. And I think that was why it could be allowed to go on and be so pervasive too. But it's the same shit with prisons and any privatized medicine or institution. It's like, nobody's trying to cure you. Nobody's trying to help you. That's not the point. Or it wouldn't, So I think that's something I'm passionate about now. But at that time, in my teen brain, I was like, that means steal a bunch of stuff from the art room and run away. So like I stole an awl, like the leather punch. I was going to really protect myself from some late night LA predators with that. And I ran away, but then I just got put right back in that same night. I came back. I was out there and I was like, this blows. And I went back.
Was that when you were with your friend and you ejected to come back? Was that Escapade?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
because I didn't realize, like, I had never been on medication, even though they kept talking about putting me on medication. And I realized they got more money if I was on medication.
Oh,
I
gosh.
had a therapist who I still actually have now, who was like, she doesn't need medication. She just has a kind of messed up situation. And this is the safest place for her right now.
You're a defiant teen and people are sticking you in a place you don't want to be. And then they keep
Yeah,
poking
they
you,
poke
like
at
pushing you, you know?
Yeah, and they love it and they know what they're doing. And it's like, it's so sinister that you can't believe it. Like, even in hindsight, I'm like, that can't be what I thought it was.
Right.
And I'll
Yeah.
remember something and I'll be like, no, I've remembered that wrong from my teenage brain. And I'll go back and do some research. And it's far worse than I ever thought, because I'm also an idealist who likes people, which I don't know how that happened. But I mean, it was crazy. It was just insane, the stuff that went on, and it still goes on. It's still going on now. And all these places like shut down and get sued out of existence. So the places that I was in then, I went back to go look at them and just like stand in the street and flip off the building or whatever.
Go pee on it.
They're all gone. They're all closed. It's a synagogue now.
Oh,
Of all
nice.
things. Now I can't even pee
You
on
can't
it. I
do
can't
that
flick
now.
it over.
Right.
The ultimate fuck you. Thanks, universe.
Yeah.
Well, for boys, it probably is not the same thing for
Wow.
girls.
Yeah,
It's
true.
True.
Maybe not.
Were you the standout in terms of fame adjacency?
At the place, you mean?
Were there other like celebrity kids in there, or were you
No, there
really
were.
singled out because you were?
No, there
Okay.
was other. So the first place I was in, I think, who was Mary Poppins, which was so fucking surreal. She, what's her name? The woman that played Mary Poppins.
Yeah. Julie
You
Andrews.
know who I'm
No.
Yeah,
Julie Andrews?
she, Julie Andrews had adopted a daughter. I don't know if she had other children that she had adopted too, but her daughter was there. So Mary Poppins would be in our group family therapy sessions, which was just like those kind of little surreal things like that. But there was other, not that place so much, not the residential unit so much. There was only maybe 4 or 5 of us down in the second place that I went to on that synagogue campus. But that night that I ran away, I went back because it was scarier out there. And my mom and Tom Arnold came and got me from there and took me to this other place, which was where all the celebrity kids went. So like, that was Van Nuys Psych. So that's where Drew Barrymore, she had just left by the time I got there. But there was always, it was mostly like musicians, kids of musicians. And
Anybody we know?
I don't know. I don't, that's the part I'm really bad at the recall. But the woman who wrote I'm with the Band, Pam.
Oh,
do you know
yeah,
what I'm talking
I know what you're
about?
talking about.
Yeah. So she's
Yes,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
wife of a famous musician who I'm blanking right now.
Pam DeBarge.
But she wrote a book about, So their son, Nick DeBarge, was there. So it was more kids of celebrities than anything, but there was a few celebrity kids that came through there. But also the AA meetings and stuff that we would go to, there was a lot of like celebrity speakers and young celebrity kids there and stuff. There was definitely like a kind of a group of people who were in recovery and, you know, like people who were open about it. So I don't feel like I'm tattling on anybody, but like Chris Farley and people like that that would go to AA meetings. So we would have AA meetings in our house and people would come, and it was musicians and comics and all different kinds of people. But I had to go to my room for those.
Was that with Tom when he was getting clean and sort of working through that stuff?
Yeah.
At that.
So right.
How do they decide on your facilities that you went to? Like, it sounds like, you know, like you just said, the first place, man, what a fucking crazy shithole. And then you're like, no, we're going to take you out of there and put you in this other place that, I don't know, I'm assuming must have been somewhat better, maybe.
It was not better. It was very different, but my sister was already there. So they were trying to keep me and my sister from each other, and the availability of places in LA adjacent where my parents would be able to visit me, it was really small. It was a small group of maybe 5 hospitals. So like people that I'm friends with now that went through the same kind of thing, we were all in the same places at different times and different ones or whatever. Yeah, just touring around all the mental institutions.
Checking them all out.
Checking them all off.
Did they not want you and your sister like conspiring with each other or?
Yes.
Okay.
That was a big part of it, was like, they knew like we were very aware of our power numbers in our family.
Okay.
And then on top of that, me and her are like, we're 13 months apart. We're Irish twins. She was the brave one. She did all the stuff. I was standing behind her like, don't do that. Don't do that. But I was standing behind her. So I was also with her on all of our crime fests. So like, I got punished the same way she got punished. So, but I was just, in my mind, I was going to make sure she didn't like disappear or anything, because she just was fearless. Like she stole the car when she was like 13, and she just was fearless is the nice way to say it. So like, I think also we fought like nobody's business too. So like none of the placements wanted to deal with. We ended up at that boarding school. The last 2.5 years of our placements, we ended up at the same boarding school, and there was major regrets by the staff members because we would get in fights and they couldn't do anything about it. And they were knocked down, drag out. She chased me at the rock. She was going to hit me in the head. And there's nothing they can do. It's not like a normal, you know, it's
two campers having problems, right? Or two students.
No, we were going to kill each other. And if anybody got in the way of us killing each other, we were going to kill them too. So they just kind of have to stand back and like, let us work it out. Yeah, that was part of why they didn't want us together.
Yeah, I could see that, especially after, you know, reading I don't know, live wire seems like a very soft term for how you described her.
Yeah.
I did laugh out loud that one moment when she came up on your friend and sprayed him with the fire extinguisher and then threw the empty extinguisher.
Like, but she has no muscular.
No, she has, I mean, her wrists are like this big. She's just like, she's resourceful, if nothing else. And then one part I didn't get to write in the book, I think, was that same day I rented a van to move out, and she just came over, and I didn't pay for the insurance. I had no money. She just took a mug and looked me right in the eye and threw the mug through the front window of the moving truck and broke the window.
Oh, that was in the book.
Okay, good. I did tell one of them that bitch. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, after the book came out, did you get any letters from lawyers or police? They're like,
no, I changed everybody's name.
About some things.
No. I was very careful beforehand about changing names, and the names I couldn't change, like my siblings. And then everybody else I asked, like the guy that she sprayed with the hose, I think I called him Sagebrush or something in there.
Yep.
His real name is Boysenberry, but I was like, I'm not going to put your real name in there. So I had to pick something equally as ridiculous.
Did he have any say? Were you like, you're not going to be Boysenberry? Would you like to be?
I'm still friends with him.
Sagebrush.
Yeah. I was like, is this okay? He's like, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, can I tell this story? And he's actually going to write some of his own memoirs or whatever. So,
nice.
Or he says he's going to, who knows, but I'll never forget. Like, I mean, he was in the mudra. I can't remember what that mudra is called, but he was just when the white cleared and he was head to toe with his fingers up, she just went ape shit.
Just leaving his body.
It's such a great picture too of him meditating, completely covered in white powder. It's like,
oh yeah. And then when he realized the powder, he knew he had to take a breath because he held his breath the whole time.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a full extinguisher. It'd take a while.
Yeah, it was a big one. It wasn't the little, it was the whole ass big one. It was like a house fire one, and the whole street, like it was like a 6-lane street. The whole street was like a big white cloud, and cars were stopping. And I mean, I had like a bloody paper towel on my hand. It was just so messy. We were very messy for a few years after, because like that was our peers. We grew up like, that was a normal day, like to have that level of chaos. Somebody's going to get put in restraints. Somebody's got to get Thorazine in the ass. And like that wasn't a day unless that happened.
There's the moment that you talked about in the book when I think Jake was bringing his girlfriend over when you were living with Jenny. And I guess you had assaulted her in theory. She called the cops.
Yeah, she did.
I mean,
such a bitch.
If they had it coming. Anyway. But
she totally had it coming.
But I love that like Jake brings over the new girlfriend and the cops are like escorting him in. It's terrible.
He knocked on the door, and he had come in and he had caught my sister trying to hit me over the head with a beer bottle, and he stopped her. And the cops were already on their way, or I think. And so like there's a bang on our door, and he went to answer, and he's alphaed up since then, but he was definitely not at 18. I think he was 18. He was still like a mama's boy that hadn't been out in the world. And he didn't go to any of the places we went to. So he didn't have like the street smart. He was just horrified by all of us. But the cops walked in and he was just standing there. And the cop walked in and shoved the flashlight into his chest and pushed him backwards and said, "Back up." And he's like, "I was answering the door." And he pushed him down on a beanbag that we had. And he just had his hands up. And the girlfriend was just sitting on the couch, like not knowing what to do. Right. And then I just escalated, and like I was in handcuffs, and Yeah, it was
Did
fun.
the cops like have a special code for you guys? Did they know, like, alert each other what they were walking into?
No, because I think we only ever went that far once. It only got that far one time. So I moved out right after that. And then I moved in with my sister Brandy, who was the one that my mom had to give up for adoption when my mom had just turned 18 and was already in the unwed mother something. So we found Brandy when I was in that first mental hospital. She came to visit me, and that was the first time I ever met her. And she was like, "Tell me why you're the one in here again." And we bonded immediately.
Yeah.
Oh,
We talk every single day, and we see each other as much as possible, at least a couple times a month. And we live close to each other now, but
it seems like
that's so cool.
she kind of got more of the good end of the situation a little bit, removed from the chaos, and all that stuff. And then to find out, hey, you have this family here and people that are like, not just kindred spirits, but really crazy, interesting people that are kindred spirits too, and you guys are able to bond and all that stuff.
Well, because she had such a normal upbringing. She had her two parents, and they had a boy and a girl that they had adopted, and they were always open and honest about the adoption. She didn't have any trauma around any lies or any of that kind of stuff. They grew up in a Jewish community, and it was a Jewish adoption.
No Thorazine.
No Thorazine for her. No, she had when I met her, her hair was all sprayed out and high, and she was blonde and tan and just very Dallas. And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I was like, all black, and and we both just kind of looked at each other. But yeah, I was all goth. I mean, I wasn't really allowed to be goth in the hospital, but I did my best. And now she's one of my best friends, and we're pal Mias. I always say, me and Jessica too. You have that bond with people Outward Bound. Do you still keep in touch with the people that you went there with?
No.
None of them? Not even the ones that got kicked out for smoking pot?
I mean, Facebook friends with a few of them, but no, I don't think we've kept in touch. But I think it was also a very different situation.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have the aggressive part of it.
Yeah.
In theory, we all committed to being there.
Yeah.
Asked for it.
Yeah, I could see that being different.
We did have the solo in it. So I sat, on the edge of a canyon for 3 days and didn't see anyone. And I remember they gave me a handful of peanuts and a handful of raisins, and I ate them the first day. And then I was just like, well, shit.
Then shit your guts
what am I
out
going to do for 3 days now?
Right. Now I got to go find a pine cone.
Yeah.
We got a potato and a carrot, a raw potato and a carrot on our first solo. And so we had to make the fire to cook the potato. And I did not have the upper body strength for it. I did sneak a fire starting kit in my bra that I found. They would bring us our stuff from base camp once a week for us to trade out our disgusting clothes.
Yeah.
And when they brought it, I was going through the pockets because I think Tom and my mom hired somebody to shop for me for that program because they were so busy. Mm-hmm. So whoever shopped for it was like, what does a person need when they're on on a wilderness trip? So they got me a fire starting kit and a knife, things we weren't a Swiss Army knife, things we weren't allowed to have. And the staff who were bringing us to the site missed it. They didn't see it in this. I kind of stuffed it into a side pocket for later. And so when they brought it to me, I took it out and I stuck it in my bra, and I was on solo and I made a fire with the kit to try to cook the friggin' potato. And then they were like, how'd you get a fire? Because they knew there was no way that I did it with my, and I was like, when people aren't watching me and judging my every move, I'm capable of a lot. And then I was like, shit, I hope I burned up all of the magnesium plates, because they went over there and they were going through the coals to see how I did it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And the fire didn't last very long.
I think you're outsmarting them. They haven't heard everything you've said, 75 times before.
Exactly. That person that's bringing the supplies in, that's just dipping into this, all right, what am I going to find when I arrive at the campsite today? That's their job.
You could tell. A lot of people have these auxiliary jobs like that where you could see the horror in their eyes. Even the boarding school we went to, they had to hire a driver to take kids to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So people would come on campus that did not know what was going on. And it just looked like a big, crazy cult, mostly because it was. But when we would go into town all together too, and we were up in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, which is white national territory. Oh, yeah. So they would scare us to not run away and be like, people know there's Jews up here. They know because there was this whole, I don't know if you guys remember Ruby Ridge, where
sure.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
All that happened when I was there. We had to wear orange vests.
Yikes.
Yeah. So it was crazy.
How far away was the Ruby Ridge?
I think it was miles.
That was like a 2-week standoff, right?
Yeah, it was a 2-week stand. We saw the helicopters, like, and we weren't allowed to go on the trails and stuff. It was maybe 6 miles or something like that. I think
Wow.
I can't remember, but we shared the woods. It was a shared woods, so they didn't know if they were going to come down or what. But the whole thing was that guy and a bunch of other people and I didn't know this until after, there was a plot to go to the school that I was at and kidnap celebrity kids from there. So Barbara Walters' daughter was going at the time, and Barbara Walters is the one that told my mom about the school. But her daughter was there, and they were going to intentionally kidnap Jewish kids because they thought like the Hollywood
that's where the money is,
conspiracy theory, and and hold them hostage to get money for guns so that they could. So when I read about all that, I'm like, hey, thank God no one told me, even though I don't think they could comprehend any of that until like investigations and 20 years later of like understanding that mentality or whatever. But I mean, I only learned that when I was writing the book, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like I don't know how many bullets I've dodged in my life.
Isn't that the
that's
isn't that Toy
wild.
Soldiers or whatever the movie, right? Where the terrorists take over the boarding school of the kids and they, do all the stuff. And then I think it's like Die Hard at a boarding school, basically.
Oh my God. I don't know if I've seen that. Now I have to go watch it.
That was like early 90s or something. It sounds like a terrible plan on their part to kidnap a bunch of troubled kids who are just defiant and are going to try to escape at every moment.
I mean, that literally sounds like an 80s thing. You're like, they're here to rescue us. And they're like, no, we're kidnapping you. And you're like, that's what you think. You're like, we'll see who this ends better for.
I kind of wish I would have got kidnapped. That could have been a fun adventure.
Jeez.
Yeah. So when you were sent away, I don't know, pick a time. It's, in the formative years of your youth, I'm sure all you want to do is to just be hanging out with your friends, go to school and live a normal life because you were basically plucked from, I don't know, being a farm animal to having to like smile for paparazzis.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to do that.
No.
And I understand that your mom got so incredibly busy. I'm sure like every aspect of her life was consumed with not only her work, but her drive to, get to the next level and the people surrounding her that are giving her 87 types of advice.
Yeah.
And don't want you in the picture or don't want anything in the picture that's going to get in her way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be tough, but then throw Tom Arnold in on top of that with like, maybe you could have understood a certain part of it because it's your mom, but there's a question in here somewhere. I was getting to.
She's like, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yes, that
I'm thinking, all those things happen.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just curious as to, how you would have navigated that if you were home and, like what you could have done differently. Not you, but I mean, like how you could have.
What I would have wished. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Like I never do in hindsight kind of things because my life is such chaos that like even wasting the 5 seconds of like thinking how it could have been.
Sure.
I'm glad that I wasn't home. I am glad that I wasn't home. I'm very capable of stirring shit up. And so are my siblings and my mom, as you all know, and Tom too.
Yeah.
Like we had way too much fun, like messing with the paparazzi when they would come stalk us or come to our house, or we knew they were following us. So we would go somewhere where like it would appear that they were going to get this story and then they wouldn't get the story. And we'd think that was like we would spend 3 hours doing that. Yeah, it was hilarious. And I mean, those parts were fun for like a rebellious teenager. I think if I was at home though, I mean, my mom was completely consumed. The show, like working on a TV show is like 12-hour days. And then weekends, the writers would write for the next week. And she had such a big hand in the writing that she was working 7 days a week, 12-hour days. And then she was also
that part I didn't realize that she was so heavily involved in like every aspect of it.
She had to be because like immediately, like year one, the head writer guy or whatever, he tried to like just make it like mean jokes about the stupid man and the shrewish woman and like that. Like you've seen that in so many shows where there's no connection between the characters. And that's why her show did so good because it wasn't demeaning to anybody. It wasn't like
it's not Married with Children.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so
Roseanne
cartoony and funny.
Heart. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it was based on our family. It was like real things that were happening and going on in the moment, and real things with like having gay siblings and stuff like that that she wanted to address and put out there that weren't being talked about or addressed. And like it was her way of doing like advocacy in a secretive way where it actually works. Because if you try to do advocacy like without couching it in humor or whatever it is, people come at you like this, and it just, you can't do it. You can't do anything but put yourself in the line of fire. I went and watched her perform last night. The things that she can talk about without talking about them is amazing. Like the negative space of her act is just so like, I was in awe the whole time. I was just like, because I hadn't seen this act that she did last night before. I hadn't seen her on stage for a while, but watching her do that with the show, she had to, it was all these little micro things too that you wouldn't expect. So she would take the script and she'd be like, this character would never say this thing. And she could see each character through their very multi-dimensional traits. It wasn't like, if you watch movies now, sometimes you'll see everybody's doing that quippy, snarky dialogue.
You're the funny
and
guy.
Everybody,
Yeah, it looks like one person wrote all the characters.
Exactly. Right. And it's exhausting. You're just like, am I just watching somebody like pleasure them their own selves? Yes. You're like, this is masturbatory and annoying. But that show wasn't like that. I had all these characters that were deep, and other characters would come in and they were equally as deep. Nobody was an extra. Even the extras weren't extras. And she really, that was her. That was her that was doing that, and her that was staying on top of the writing so that it didn't devolve into some kind of like circus act.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you guys had Matt Williams, right? Who's the writer. How is that proposed that he was going to come and watch you? Like that to me feels so incredibly bizarre, as and maybe it's just because of nowadays kind of thing. But like the idea that he's like, let me just come and study how you guys interact so that I can make characters better. Like that just seems so bizarre to me.
It was really bizarre, again, in hindsight, because I was like 10 at the time or something. So I was like, there's just this guy coming over to observe us. Like, I didn't even think I don't even know if they told me that that's what was happening until later. I think that that's what it was. I didn't know until later that that's what was happening. I thought it was just.
So, man, if you're here to watch, like me and my sister are going to give you a show.
Well, I always like my mom would have comics come over and I would put on a show for them. But like this guy, he was so just boring, and it just seemed like maybe an insurance adjuster coming over to check out your home kind of thing. So I don't even think I noticed until I was told later that that's what that was. And he was watching the dynamics of everything. So he wasn't really even participating in conversations or anything with us. It was just.
Fly on the wall.
It's weird in hindsight, but I mean, I'm one of those people that doesn't like notice something's weird. And then like 3 days later, I'll be like, that was really weird.
Somebody goes,
because
what?
I'm processing the last weird thing that happened to me. So I can't possibly process the weirdness in the moment. And I just adjust and handle it. And then the next day I'm like, that was weird. Some of those things were weird. And so I don't think I'm,
well, then you write a book about it.
Yeah. I'll write a book about it later. Exactly.
I think there was so much good perspective here. Like you read so much, not as much now. I guess we kind of see the after effects, but you know, there's the famous stereotype of like the childhood star. That's the term I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You wonder like how they fall into such traps and end up in all these horrible places. And like, I mean, look at the situation you were in, and you weren't even involved in any of that, right?
Yeah. Nobody wanted anything from me. If somebody wanted something from me or thought they were going to get anywhere on my coattails. I mean, there were little situations like that where like people were trying to get to my mom. So they'd come to me or through me and be like, hey, can you?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, really weird. And the paparazzi would do it. And like even last night or the night before at her show, I was walking to her car and we got like a mob of people. Like 2 nights ago, a mob of people ran at us, and I just kind of put my arms like in a bubble around my mom, like trying to help her get in the car. And I'm like, do you want to deal with it? Do you want to sign this stuff? But people were like coming to me, and I'm like, hey, back up. And the woman just started elbowing me in the rib cage, pushing me. And I'm like, could you please stop pushing me? And she's like, I'm not pushing you, ma'am, as she was pushing me, stepping on my foot and being like, Roseanne, can I take a picture? Like people are just really pushy, and they don't see celebrities as human beings. And people were really mean to my mom if she would say, I don't want to do pictures right now or whatever. And like last night we left the club And we went out this other side door thinking we learned our lesson from the night before. And this guy just bomb rushed her. He like Roseanne, like so loud that I'm like, is he going to kill us? Like you always have to just be like, okay, this could be.
Seriously, I can't believe that still happens. Good God.
I think it always, I mean, it was a smaller crowd of people doing that because it was a more elite little group and comedy club. But like, I stood in the guy's way and I'm like, take a deep breath and calm down and I'll make sure you get a picture, but you have to calm down. And I like had to rub him in circles on his back. He was just so excited. I did. He's like, the gays love Roseanne and I flew all the way out here. I'm like, I understand. And I know you're excited, but if you don't calm down, you're not going to get a picture because nobody's going to let you get up there. I will take you up there to get a picture if you fucking calm down. And he's like, I guess I did kind of run and get excited. And I could tell he was on the spectrum. I could tell.
Okay.
And his intentions were good. He was being just sweet and he was really excited. Just no emotional regulation. That's kind of my thing with 5 kids. So I was just like, I promise, just take a deep breath. Great. You're scaring people. Stop scaring. And I didn't want him to scare my mom because she was still too far from the car. So we got his picture and he moved on and then we helped her get in the car and stuff. So it was okay. But this is the calm adult Jenny still struggling with those moments that I get to choose if I'm part of or not. And more often than not, I don't because I'm in a different place in my life and with my kids and everything. But as a kid, it was awful. People stomped on me. They pushed me out of the way. I had because I was short. I had elbows in my throat. I had people whispering to me, can you do this? Can you get that? Can you go to your mom's purse? And like just stuff like that. And I'm like
no, like what?
It was insanity.
Based on what you just said, I just wanted to throw this out there too, that I think, and you kind of touch on it a little bit in the book too, but like, I think you do such a very good job of like seeing like the good in people, even for around whatever, like even in that moment right there where somebody's coming at you, like sort of, aggressively and you're still like, but I understand where you're coming from and all that stuff. And even in the book, I mean, with, Tom's situation.
Yeah, I tried. That one was hard.
I get it, but I also didn't feel disingenuous either.
Okay, good.
I don't know. I think certain people are like that are always going to be like, yeah, but that person's a complete dick, but whatever. And I think you did a really good job with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was hard. It's hard daily. I mean, I think that's probably hard for most people daily. It's hard not to get cynical and hate people, and especially like right now, you look at the division, just politically, the quarantine, like all these things that have happened that have divided and subdivided people. And I can't live on a planet like that. So like, I don't, that's not an option to me to become like that. I just can't do it. It doesn't work in my soul and body. Like I will collapse and crumble in a minute if I start to think that people are all bad or all good, or I can't do that binary thinking like that. So yeah, everybody pretty much gets the benefit of the doubt for me. And I have I have a spiritual belief that we're here to learn and to grow, and that a lot of times will put us in situations where we're forced to learn and grow, and it's uncomfortable and miserable a lot of times. But I think like the less we let each other grow and the less we support each other in that growth, the longer this fucking nightmare gets dragged out for, the nightmare being reality. So, I'm ready to go to the next phase, and I don't want to go there you can't get there without other people. We're all one entity. So it's like, there is a level of like empathy and compassion and understanding I have for everybody, even people who other people would write off, which it makes it really painful to be alive because every interaction is like deep. But I do think like healing's the most important thing to me on a personal level. And it's also on a spiritual global level. And I think that's why we're here. So that's my focus. Even if I do other things, that's still everything I do has that focus. Even at the show last night, like, that guy, there was somebody else too that was having a hard time. And it's like being a safe space for people. I wanted to be a doctor my whole life. And then I'm glad I didn't become a doctor, but I think like in a perfect world, and I'd probably be a therapist I still might go that route.
You have 5 boys and you run a farm. You're like almost a doctor, I think. I think you have probably enough medical training and whatnot to pass for some of the stuff.
A vet.
You're an honorary doctor.
I think so too.
Do you think that this is going to seem really out of left field, but do you think the survival stuff like maybe kind of threw you into like the farm life thing a little bit? Like,
it wasn't. I do know where it came from. Like, it wasn't the survival thing specifically, although So I think when I was at the boarding school and I had been locked up previously for 2 years, I had already done 2 survival programs. I prefer being outside. I love being outside. I like doing all the outside stuff. I wasn't allowed outside. That was probably the most torturous part of all of it, is like I was in a building for 2 years and I did not, like, I got outside maybe 3 different times, like minor times, like, and would get away for like 1 day and then have to come back.
Insane. The thing that could have been so healing for you was like,
Right, that's what I'm
locked
saying.
away.
Yeah. And that's why I wish I would have wanted to go on survival, because I really would have healed. And actually, I did have kind of a healing experience at the second one accidentally, because I was always the whiny kid that everybody hated. And then this other kid came along and he took that position, and I was like, he outwhined me. And I was like, oh my God, that poor son of a bitch. And I was watching it from the outside and I was like, I wish he would just see that it's in his head. And then I was like, oh God. So like I had this like epiphany that day. And then of course they let me off the day after, because now they had broken me or whatever.
You said the right words. You said the right words. You did the right thing.
Did the right thing. And I was like, I got this. I can get to the top of the mountain. And they're like, how about instead you go back? The best part of the school was during the second phase, because that one had phases as well. The first phase, you had to just chop wood. It was like 3 months of just chopping wood, because everything was chopping wood down to kindling, starting at the top, down to kindling. We had to do logging and pull the trees out of the fucking forest and cut them down.
Trying to wear you out.
They were trying to wear us out, but also everything really was wood burn. It was all wood burn. So like,
oh my God,
all of our heat, our hot water, everything, cooking, stove in the kitchen, all of it was wood burning. So
their electric bills are really affordable.
Yeah, that was part of the whole slave labor idea of the school.
Okay. I think it's the line from Hamilton. We know, because you don't pay for labor.
I haven't seen that yet. I need to go see it. I know I'm gonna like be transformed by it.
But
we had a farm. There was a farm at the boarding school in Idaho, and it was kind of separate from the rest of the school. But for the second 3 months, you worked on the farm, and during that time, like we had like corn and a couple other things growing. We had a huge chicken coop. We collected the eggs and took them to the kitchen, and that's what the kids ate. There was 300 kids there. So it was like, you needed like 600 eggs a day. So it was like a chicken palace.
Jeez. We
had horses, we had sheep, we had like all these animals. And I like to be down there. And there was like lambing season where the lambs were born and just all of that. And I was like, I don't know if if I already had that in me or whatever, but I've always just loved that kind of simplified life and like doing things more like the homesteading thing. It was always a goal of mine. And I think some of it came from there. Some of it came from having a bunch of kids. And then I wanted to be at home and do all the homesteading stuff. I just have that in my blood. I think a lot of people are kind of coming back around to those ideas now that it's a privilege instead of like a forced way of living because you're on the prairie or whatever.
Right.
I need a lot of peace, I think, to make up for a lot of peace that I didn't have. And also with so many kids, I wanted to expose them to those kind of things too. I also think that the food system in America is just, it's terrible. It's horrible. And the soil is horrible and all the poisoning of everything. Mm-hmm. And there's a good way to do things. So I was like, no, there's got to be a better way. So then I started reading about like sustainable farming and all that like 20 years ago. And that did lead to us moving to Hawaii and running that farm there for a while and learning more about all of that and just how like ethically raising meat, not doing the whole vegan versus I'm going to get a cheeseburger to spite the vegans. Like I just didn't want to be I was like, it's a system.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's just so infantile.
It's so God, so much shit is infantile. And I think it's getting worse, honestly, but I don't give a shit because I'll just move out to Wyoming and just kidding.
And take all of you with me.
No, but I understand like the need to center yourself with all of the chaos around you and the chaos in your head. I mean, it just sounds like LA was not your jam.
I don't think it ever was. I think I just didn't know that I was allowed to leave. And like after, I was there from 8 to 13, I got locked up. 13 to 18, I was all over. I was in Utah. I was in Idaho. I would come back to LA. And then when I was 18, I'm like, yeah, I'm from LA. I live in LA. And I did some LA stuff. Like I wrote a cartoon with my sisters and it got like greenlit or whatever. And we started working on the pilot script for it. And we sort of sold it to the people who did Ren and Stimpy or were in the process of selling it. And I got pregnant with my first kid, and I just stopped giving a shit about anything else. And I couldn't motivate to do. And I think I just really needed a break from all of that, because I am kind of going back into that right now. I'm working on some other stuff, but I'm going to do it my way from the comfort of my own safe bubble. And I think I've learned a lot of tools, you know, I've picked up a lot of tools along the way for chaos, and just staying, like you said, like staying grounded, staying centered, recentering myself sometimes every 3 seconds. Sometimes I get an hour where I'm like, oh, I didn't have to pull my energy back in and recenter myself. And you know, I am a spiritual person, but also wary of toxic spirituality, of all of it's manifestation. If you're poor, it's because you manifested it. And like, you know, those kind of things.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Like the secret kind of stuff. Yeah, I can relate a lot to that. I work on mindfulness a lot with my therapist on being in the moment and trying to like block out all of everything.
Yeah. And hammock. I have a hammock in my car. I always have my hammock. I take my hammock. And now that I'm in, like, because I had the ocean and
like a camping hammock, the kind you can just stretch out anywhere.
Yeah,
nice.
You can put it anywhere, but also it's got like a mosquito net and a rain fly, and you can sleep in it. And but I haven't been able to sleep in it for a while because certain people have to be touching me at all times.
Could you make shoes from it if you needed to?
Probably not, but I could make a dress. I could 100% make a dress.
Would it convert back into a hammock? That'd be great.
Yeah.
I could do that. 100%.
There you go. It's a nice breathable fabric.
Yeah.
The toxic part of getting wrapped up in spirituality.
Yeah.
That was really funny timing. We had someone on last week who is like a prominent journalist and author in exposing Scientology.
Ooh, yeah, I saw that on the I have it saved for me to watch, because
he was a lot of fun. That was wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What a life to choose. Has he had an attempt on his life yet?
He has not, but lots of peripheral. If you listen to it, it's great. He tells stories.
I'm going to listen to
peripheral
100%.
Just attacks in just the most bizarre ways.
Jesus.
Trying to get his mom fired from her job.
Trying to make his mom look like a conspiracy or like a terrorist, you know, like shit like that. His wife, the same thing.
And then nobody believes you when you say it, because it makes you sound crazy. And people are like, well, you were into Scientology for a minute, so you're insane anyway. So because that kind of happened with us too.
Right.
I have some stuff in my book about that.
I know that was really interesting. The fact that it came about, and the fact that you willingly said, okay, you know, I'll give this a try, and were quickly, you know, turned off by it. You said it wasn't for you. Yeah. But I think that's the majority. I think there's a minority of people that get sucked into it. It's definitely a certain kind of personality.
Yeah.
Not just for that, but any of like the cultish spirituality groups.
100%.
You weren't wary of that at all? You just kind of blew it off?
No, I was real wary of it. And I just didn't know. It was more of a curiosity, honestly. Like at first I was like, I'm going to go. Like, it was more me trying to have an experience that I could laugh at later, basically, was the whole first part of it.
That's pretty funny for a lark.
Yeah, it was. I was like, I got to know. I just got to know. It was like just morbid curiosity. So, and then I went, and then it was exactly what I thought. And I just come out of all of these systems that were like the boarding school I went to was S inspired.
Were you Jewish from the start? Were both your parents Jewish?
Yeah. Well, my mom's ethnically Jewish, and her lineage, she's 100%, and her parents are 100%. And they're, you know, if you trace roots back, it goes back to the Levant, like all Jews. But then her family got pushed out in diaspora to Lithuania, and that's where they ended up. That's where they realized what was happening. That's where they sent some of them to the US, which is where my great grandma on both my mom and dad, my mom's parents, her mom and dad, both their parents like sent them to the US. And then they slaughtered everybody in the village. And my grandma was only 3. She's still alive, my puppy. She was only 3 when her mom got a phone call saying that they found a mass grave with the whole family in there. So they thought everybody had been murdered, and there's no paperwork. They burned all the paperwork, the Nazis did. So there isn't any paperwork. You can't trace anything. So not until like 23andMe, when people were doing DNA tests, and we realized we had, you know, family that was in Israel still. And we had some other family in like Europe somewhere. And then the weirdest, like these weird things always happen to us. But my bubby, she found out that she had a really good friend that she made because she got some lung disease. She went to this doctor. She loved the doctor. He introduced her to his wife. My bubby and the wife became friends and they were hanging out. And my grandma Bubby found out that that woman is her cousin. And there's like, we have like 5 cousins left on the planet. So it was insane. So like, we're like, how does that even happen? We're trying to figure out how it happened, but just the Jewish community on earth, it's like 0.02% of the population. It's so small and everybody's related in one way or another. So my sister Brandy, her adoptive family, she's had a lot of loss recently. So, you know, she's doing a lot of research and that kind of stuff. So she's finding out that like one of my best friends that I met in LA on a TV show, our families are friends here in Denver. And there's a large group of Jews in diaspora in Denver that came from like Russia and stuff. And my sister married one of them. So it's just like, we all know each other, even down to Tom Arnold's latest ex-wife, Ashley. She's Jewish too. And she's from Denver. And I didn't know that. We have a mutual friend. We were talking and it was like, we all played at the same park. So my sister that I didn't know, it's so weird.
It's just crazy.
It's awesome that you find that together. Then from a universe standpoint, I'm like, there's such a big world out there. How are you all in the same space?
I know. That's what, and one of the things about having my mom be a celebrity is like, I'll be weird places. Like I was on an airplane one time and we were flying to Italy and some girls like came up to me and she's like, are you with Roseanne? And I thought she was just going to be like a fan. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm her assistant. I was just being a bitch because I thought I knew what I was going to get. And she's like, oh, well, that's weird because I am married to her old next door neighbor, Keith. And I was like, Keith was my like boyfriend in kindergarten. Like we got fake married and everything. And I was like, what? And so just like seeing how small the world is, because I'll hear people talk about her or I'll be somewhere where people are talking, like even last night at the show, like when I was outside and people didn't know that I was her kid, just hearing things that people were saying. And I'm like, oh, I know who they're talking about. And like even other celebrities or comics or anything like that. It's just such a small world.
That is bizarre. I wonder if that's more of a West Coast thing. I've never run into that on the East Coast. But my people are mostly located in Baltimore and New York. So
you're also not connected to anybody more of a celebrity than I am. So
that's very true.
Which you've chosen poorly.
I don't know. You need to have like one cult leader or even like Joe Dispenza. You can pick anybody.
That's what we need to do. Yeah. That's what we need to do.
There we go.
That's going to be the next thing.
All right. Thanks. I mean, I have a million more questions, but I don't want to hold you all day.
It's fine. If you don't mind me having to scold everybody, I could go on forever because nobody's going anywhere today. It's raining.
Oh, yeah. It is like 90 degrees here. And I went for a run right before this. And I have a towel next to me because I was like, oh my God, I was like, you're
an idiot. Why would you do that right before you know you have to get on
poor choice.
Get into a meeting.
I can't tell. Nobody can smell you on camera, so it's fine.
That's true.
Good thing. So I have one question, and I mean, I almost don't want to.
You can ask him them
if you say, go to hell, I don't want to talk about this, that's fine. I'll just cut it out.
Okay.
Your whole background, like there's so much spirituality. You know, your mom came from this place that you described in the beginning. We're hanging out in like women's bookstores with these kind of like Earth Mother Wiccan types of feminist hippies. I see the trajectory along the way, her defiancy and her type of humor and her comedy and her pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And I can understand why. But from that to where she stands now with like all the MAGA stuff, I made a connection to everything. At the very end of your book, I thought you wrapped it up really well. I just couldn't make that leap at the end.
What do you mean about talking about her tweet? Or because I don't think I went into the MAGA stuff in there.
No, I think you explained the tweet really well as you could have.
Yeah.
Just she is who she is, and she says this stuff to, you know,
well,
get a rise out of
we
people.
We can kind of see like what's happening in the world right now too. That doesn't mean that she wasn't also dabbling in conspiracy theories, but she's also dabbled in the conspiracy theory of like Bill Cosby's a rapist and all these other conspiracy theories in Hollywood that they're only conspiracy theories until they're true. I don't think any of that about Trump. I am not a Trump fan, as I call them, because they are not.
You don't strike me as one.
Yeah, I'm not.
It doesn't seem to fit your lifestyle. Like that's.
No, I cannot. Really... I'm not for fanatic worship, idol worship, any of that kind of shit. It's gross to me, all of it. And also, we don't need a face on the ideology to talk about the ideology. So we can talk about the ridiculousness of the political climate right now and how ridiculous everything is and why. And, if you go into any conspiracy theory, let it be reading Behold a Pale Horse or something like that, where you can see the real, I don't get the MAGA shit. I don't get any of it. More than anything, it's an ideology. And unless we talk about it like that, it's just going to be more divisive, more divisive, more divisive. And if we can talk about ideologies, then we can fucking fix them.
Right.
Because we're not attacking the individual person, just like, the guy that ran up to my mom and was like, I could have seen that as a threat. And I could have been like, we're on opposite sides of the world and fuck you back up or I'm going to beat your ass.
Yeah. But there's also that defiancy, like you mentioned earlier, of, the person who's saying, I hate vegans so much, I'm going to eat a hamburger.
Yeah, I can't do any. I have
that
kids
extremism.
That do that. It's extremism. That I think the downfall of the entire world right now, if there is going to be one, I hope we get our shit together before this, but it is extremism. And the thing is, extremism starts on an individual basis, and it's where you think you're not part of the whole.
Right.
And then you get to be separate from the whole, and you get to have your extremist thoughts where you're either better or sometimes worse than everybody. Even those thoughts that we all have, anything that is a thought about separation adds to that. It adds to the extremism, and it gives it a petri dish to fester in. So in my opinion, everything is on that personal individual level. That's where everything has to start. If every person kept their own self in check, centered, whatever, there wouldn't be one single conflict. There can't be conflict without that. And, I hope everybody gets to a level where they see that. I hope it doesn't have to be painful for them to see that. I think a lot of people are kind of opening up to
the majority get to the level.
Majority. We just need a critical mass of people to get there.
I have this theory about the pendulum swinging, that the pendulum has to swing really far right, and then it has to swing really far left. And then eventually, hopefully it centers more. And I keep waiting for it to center more, but it keeps finding farther ways to swing right or swing left. It's a weird thing, but I still have faith and belief that, cooler heads will prevail, generationally speaking.
I know. Or we thought the pendulum was swinging and it was actually in the center, swinging in the center. And we didn't know how fucking far it could go one way or the other, which is what I'm hoping we don't find the answer to, just with, Christian nationalism and the extremism in our country and the losing of women's rights because of that. And that same extremism. And, in my opinion and my growing up in the feminist bookstores, everything is centered around the subjugation of women, all of it. It's all that is key number one. So you have to be like, okay, what system would have to do that to be in place? You would have to subjugate Mother Earth, which we do with our farming practices and the way we treat the earth and everything, and subjugate women, because that divine female, divine feminine energy, that's how we live. And there's a Jewish thing too about it's not second coming as Christians believe, Jesus coming back and being Jesus again or whatever. It's the return of the divine feminine energy and that balance coming back into play from, the masculine, the toxic part. Not that masculinity is toxic at all.
Right.
Divine feminine doesn't exist without divine masculine, and that balance and that perfect, beautiful balance right there that very few people even have. We have both in us, and we have to balance our own selves of those two energies. And when everybody does that, there's collective balance, and everybody wants to either go at it from, yelling at the next person to change them. And there's none of the internal work. And it's actually really fucking simple. It's actually really simple. Do your internal work and the world can survive. And any of the barking, yelling, protesting, screaming, any of it, it's all masturbatory and obnoxious and stupid and counterintuitive and counterproductive. Now I'm on one. Now I have to be quiet. My higher self told me to shut the fuck up.
There's a quote. Right. Find your center. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like what I said in the very beginning, that I like people like you who are grounded, that have a high level of emotional intelligence, that can step back and see everything for just the silly bullshit that it is. And, I mean, you have to fight against all the people who live in fear, essentially. I mean, it's all
it's
fear
just
based.
fear. It's
Fear
either
and
fear or love.
insecurity.
Everything can be boiled down
Fear
to.
of losing tradition or fear of change. It's all a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you for diving into that. I was
Yeah, no problem. That's my favorite thing
just
to dive
curious.
into.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, I just didn't want to take the attention off of you and like talk about your mom.
Go
But
there.
I mean,
that is, I mean, I think I talked about me and my mom and all of humanity and every individual
I was just
person.
saying, we touched a lot there. We touched a lot there. It was good. It was good. I mean, but I mean, you know, it's a stupid, I guess, simplistic mantra, but it's like, start with yourself, you know, be the change that you want to see, kind of a thing.
really
of like,
is.
of just look in the mirror and be like, hey, how about if I make myself a better
like Michael
person?
Jackson,
That'll be-
instead of writing
Yes.
Man in
I
the
thought you were
Mirror,
about to quote Michael.
I'm going to. No.
well, and my mom did
Yeah.
that before she had the status and was just like, fuck it, deal with it.
I was just
to
about to say
everybody's-
your mom did it, except that it was such a shitty time, and probably a shitty time for women in that industry, in that environment,
Oh, God.
that she kind of came probably with the same sort of attitude of "fuck you, I'm the man," so to speak.
Yeah. She was like,
words.
if you
But-
would like to be graced with my presence, which they
Yeah.
were graced with her presence, then you're going to deal with my, and it's kind of, I mean, I have noticed that I have the same kind of mindset about, like, you know, I've had people say, oh, you know, you have 5 kids, you're a stay-at-home mom, like, you know, kind of in a derogatory, you can hear the derogatory tone when you get trained for that kind of ear or whatever. And just like, you know, nobody's going to ever take you seriously professionally. And I'm like,
No, you should be like, the Mormons are creating $1 billion influencer industry off of, you know, stay-at-home moms with multiple kids.
oh my God. Yeah. But they're like,
There
I'm
you
like,
go.
what fucking outfit is that, man? Like I kind of wanted to do an answer to that too, because they all have 5 kids. They're all wearing matching outfits. They're clean. I was just like, you know, I spent a lot of time in Utah when I was young, and they really are like that. Like they walk around like full makeup and shit. I'm like, that's amazing that you can do that. And I have nothing but respect for people who can do that. I can't do that.
It's funny. The cynic in me says, I can't wait to listen to the podcast about what's going on behind the scenes there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the cynicism,
the true crime one. It's
the
a true
cynical
crime
nature,
podcast.
right? The cynical nature of being Gen X is that you just wait. You're like, I know there's something under the hood. I know there's
That's what
something
happened with
crazy
that.
going.
Remember that one woman that she had, like, she was an influencer, a parenting influencer, and then her kids got duct tape ankles and wrists running to somebody else's house underweight, and like she's in prison now.
Which, to be fair, we've all thought of. You know,
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
we've all considered at times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, we just didn't go through with it. It's okay to think things. You just can't go through it.
I didn't get caught with it. What? Masking tape, not duct tape. Doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah, right.
painter's tape rips really easy. I have tied my kids
That's
up with
right.
painter's
There
tape
you
for
go.
fun.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you have boys, you know how it is. My son and my daughter are very different. My son, I just can't help it. Like, whenever I see him in his room, like just reading quietly or sitting in his bed, I instinctually just want to jump on him and like drive my fists into him and start pummeling him. And he thinks it's the greatest thing ever. You know,
They
like
love that.
it's such a game for him.
That's all that I'm like, hey, you guys, because I have a wide span of children too, because I had a COVID baby. Well, I have 5 kids. One of them was planned, the second one. And the oldest one is 20 years older than the youngest. And then the youngest and the next one up are like 10 years apart. So I have this very wide span. So you would think that the brothers would be like with the baby, just more fatherly, and they get there, but no, they're punching each other. This 3-year-old has the worst mouth I've ever heard. I've had to tell him, like, you can say all those things, but we say them in the car when the windows are up. And the second we get out of the car, there's no more of that, because he's going to say them. I'm like, oh, I mean, he's hilarious. On top, he's got great delivery. And he delivers it so well. Like the other day, he's like, oh, where'd you get that shirt? And I was like, Target. And he's like, when? And I said, oh, probably like, and he goes, did I ask? Like, and that's what his 17-year-old brother does. And I just looked at him and I was like, hey, do I congratulate him on the delivery? Because that was perfect.
Right. Timing was impeccable.
The timing was
I want to
impeccable.
laugh, but I want to be angry at you, smart ass.
That's how, when we were little, we got away with anything if we could make our parents laugh. And if you didn't hit the mark, then you were fucked. So it was like, you really had to, it was like diving and landing on a pinhead a lot of times. So I think I've accidentally brought some of that into my parenting with my kids, but man, they all have mouths on them. They're all hilarious. And,
Well, it's hard to be mad at your kid and then they throw some sort of zinger at you and you're like, all right, now I can't. Now you're gonna try to keep a straight face and act like that
I'm
wasn't
so
really.
bad at that. I literally I'm like constantly like trying to put my face behind something. And I'm also looking at the brothers like, don't laugh.
Oh my
And he's
God,
over
I
there
can't
like
imagine that.
performing.
Yeah, we've been there. All right. I want to keep this going because you're a very fun person to talk to.
Thank you.
But I want to give you some time in your day.
Yeah.
So let's just jump to the last thing. We like to wrap up a travel aspect to this. The question is always, where do you call home? I don't know where that would be for you.
Yeah.
You want to pick an institution?
Yeah.
No, a state, a place that you call home, because we want to know about that place. And the question here is, if we were to come visit for a day, you're playing host. I don't want to say tour guide because we don't want like the
touristing
tourist version. You know, we want the authentic version. What are we doing for a day?
Well, I just moved to I was born in Denver. So that's always kind of felt like a home to me. I think I have several places. Hawaii.
I love Denver.
I really like Denver. I also I'm up by Fort Collins. So it's more like, and I'm in the country, like I'm across from a corn farm, of course. And I'm on a little bit. There. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love it most of the time. Everything after Hawaii is going to be poisoned. But like Hawaii to me feels the most like my spiritual home, but because I'm in northern Colorado right now and I'm doing all these things to try to keep myself from going insane and to keep my little one entertained and stuff. A normal day for me, I like wake up, I go outside, I'm on like some acreage, I have a beautiful view of the mountains, and if the weather permits, which is not often enough, I'll go sit in my hammock. So you can come sit in my hammock with me and then just marvel at the beauty until I get my shit together enough to take on the day. And then a lot of times, like for leisure, I like to go, there's a river, like a huge river. I like to just go sit at the river, put my feet in, go fishing. I'll take the kids fishing. And we only ever use like a Paw Patrol rod. We've had really good luck with those. And I've bought expensive rods and they never work out, but I've caught every single fish on that.
What are you catching? Like, how big a fish are we catching in the river?
We caught, like, it was funny because there was these two guys like doing fly fishing. I don't know if you've been to Colorado, but the guys in the river, they take it very seriously, full gear, everything. Yeah. And my 14-year-old at the time, like me and him always would go fishing. And he's like, I really want to catch a trout. I've never caught one. We caught catfish, we caught bluegill, we've caught other things like down in Texas, but we never caught a trout. And we're like, okay, we're going to get a trout. So we go to the river and there's all these guys and all this gear. And I'm like, we're not getting a fucking fish, whatever. But fish anyway and have fun. So we're playing. And then I'm like, hey, we got to go. My 14-year-old goes, let me cast one more time. Let me cast one more time. And I'm like, okay, fine. So he takes the Paw Patrol rod and he throws it into this area that, and immediately catches a fish. And all the guys in their fly fishing outfits like turn and are staring at us. Yeah. And he's just reeling it in on this little Paw Patrol rod. And I was like, I was like really proud, but then I was like, fuck, now I got to clean it.
Yeah.
Because he makes me do it. I have to do all that and then cook it and everything. So we didn't throw it back. We kept it because it was big enough and all the limits. And he's underage, so he's allowed to catch a fish. Like I didn't have a license then yet.
Oh my God. All the things you got to know. Good Lord.
You got to know so much. It's like, but it's worth it because it's just, again, another one of those vagus nerve resetting things. I need about 500 a day of those. But going to the river is nice. Fort Collins is amazing. And it's a college town and there's breweries everywhere, but it's not like my scene really, but it's a cool place. I admire it from afar.
What would be your scene? Like, was there like more
river,
just out
river
there?
And hammock. Yeah. Or being in the kitchen. Like I like doing the homesteading stuff and like, I like fermenting stuff. I like cooking. I like, I don't love cleaning, but I will. But just like mommy duties take a lot of my time up. And like, I love writing. I love getting away for a couple hours and writing. Me and my sister were working on a podcast, but we had to scrap it because we're too angry. I think we need to like go to therapy a little bit and then
work out a few more things, round off a little bit of the rough edges.
Yeah,
come
exactly.
back at it
or
again.
all of them. Yeah.
It took Ken and I a long time to get to this point.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of test run podcasting just to get out our anger issues towards each other.
Yeah, that's what happens. Because then you're like talking about, and then I'll just go into these. You heard me go on one tirade or whatever, so I'll do that. And she's very like, she's so positive, and like sometimes I'm like, I think I'm a positive person, and then I talk to Brandy. She's like, everything is like, she sees the good in everything. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And then we argue about it. So
Until you cross
That's how
her,
you balance.
she tries to kill you.
no, she's not even like, I can't even cross her
No.
anymore. She's amazing. She's like just a high soul.
Wow.
She's just here to guide the rest of us into the next level or something. Cause
Like I said, she got the
cool.
the genes and that stuff, but she didn't go through the ringer,
yeah.
of
So that's
kind
it's
of where
nice to
you
see
went.
what I would have been if I didn't go through the ringer. Like she went through her own
Yeah,
ringers and
but yeah,
stuff
I was
too.
going to
But
say
we
everybody
just,
goes to their own ringer,
yeah.
but still, like just to see a
She
different
had
sort of output,
Yeah.
and the fact that you guys are close now is like that's great, so good.
yeah, it's amazing. She's so cool.
Absolutely. All right. So your day is all outdoors.
I mean, a lot of it is, but then I have to do a lot of chores and shit too. So I mean, if you guys came and hang out,
I'm not coming. I'm not really looking to do chores at your house.
Yeah, you guys can go outside. I have a fire pit, I have a
There we go.
jacuzzi. And yeah, but I like to go do that. And I also drive up to Wyoming because like they have different food laws there. So I go buy all my meat up there and like raw milk and stuff. And then because I'm only 15 minutes
Was that on
from
the t-shirt?
Wyoming.
We have different food laws.
They do. Cottage
Your
laws.
weird, come buy
We
your
have raw
weird shit
milk.
here.
You can buy raw milk here. Yeah, it's actually.
I was going to say, like, how do you have to like cover that up? Are you like bootlegging that in?
No, but in Hawaii, I did
gosh.
have to do that. So we had like a black market that was strictly raw goat milk. And it was like, you could buy a share of the animal and not the milk. So you can buy like 20 shares of a goat and then everybody gets 1 liter or whatever. Like that's how people have to do it from, that's actually originated on the mainland from a guy called Joel Salatin that wrote a book called Polyface Farms, where he goes into all the USDA stuff and like the laws and people getting arrested, SWAT teams coming in because they were selling raw milk and just ways that he had to get around that because the USDA is a mafia. I probably shouldn't have said that, but you can leave it in anyway.
That's all right.
That's the pull quote.
Yeah, pull quote. That'll be the tweet that goes out. We'll send around that.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's better than my mom's a racist one. So I prefer anything besides that is not true.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, this was fun.
It's super fun.
Yes, it was very fun. It was nice to meet you guys. And thank you for reading my book and saying nice things.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
My wife turned me on to it. Actually, she read it first.
Oh, that's cool.
With it was in her book club recently. She's in a couple book clubs.
Oh yeah. I wonder what the rest of them. I have intentionally not looked at any.
No, I don't know.
I would rather maybe hear that part, but like I can't even the Amazon reviews. I haven't looked at any. I can't look at anything. I just
it's probably
can't
better for you. It's probably better for you. I mean, you've seen
totally
the other side of it, so yeah, it's probably better if you're actually probably blessed in the fact that you can say with honesty, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to know, and if. Yeah, I'm like, it was an objective perspective. My therapist gets that, bitch, not my
that's
readers.
That's the part that's still you that you hold on to. Everything else is just kind of like a hey, yeah.
I'm like, cool. It's not funny, which like if you're getting deep into the emotions, it stops being objective and funny. But also, I think she was dead on too. So I do think that, there's a point where you kind of protect yourself like that, which you kind of have to, which I think I did an okay job because nobody was pissed at me. That's how I knew.
Yeah.
Nobody was angry.
Right. You didn't get any scathing anger kind of stuff.
Yeah. Nobody sued me. Nobody was pissed. I got some slack here and there, but it was misunderstandings and close relationships. And then that was it. So I think I did exactly what I set out to do. It was a win. Yeah.
All right. Well,
it was nice to meet you guys.
This was really fun.
Very nice.
Enjoy the rest of your rainy day.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Appreciate the time. Take care.
Bye.